Hello everybody, today we're going to be creating a 2020 election map based on the party registration of almost 50 million votes cast already nationwide. Now NBC News has this cool little feature that is tracking mail voting and in-person early vote in almost all states across the country. But in this video, we're only going to be focusing on the competitive battleground states as you see in gray on your screen right now. Do keep in mind that the early vote will tend to favor Democrats in general, but you'll also see that there are quite a few surprises to the contrary. Nevertheless, let's get started with the state of Alaska, where 73,000 ballots have already been returned. That is a little over 20% of all votes cast in the state in 2016, and Democrats have a 4% lead. That being said, it is only 27% to 23%. And the other 50% has come from a majority of independent voters that make up the majority of the electorate in Alaska. Obviously, we have no way of knowing which way that block of voters went, but for the purposes of this video, Alaska will be a lean blue state on this map thanks to a current 4-point Democratic lead. Although it is worth mentioning that Alaskan independents tend to lean Republican in presidential election years. Next up on this map, though, is the state of Nevada. Over 600,000 ballots have already been returned, meaning over half of the 1.1 million votes total in 2016 have already been cast there. That is pretty significant, and currently Democrats outnumber Republicans by 8 percentage points. Compared to 2016 exit polls, though, in Nevada, this is a 7% jump for both Democrats and Republicans. It's Nevada's independents, however, who see a 14% decrease in their votes counted thus far, and they swung towards Trump by 13 percentage points in 2016, so that could make a significant difference. Nevertheless, Nevada goes likely blue with an 8-point Democratic lead on the map. And moving on across the Sun Belt, in Arizona, 1.4 million votes have been returned, which again is over half of the 2016 total vote in the state. It should be expected, though, that Arizona breaks all turnout records this year, but Democrats have an 8-point lead here as well, as of right now. Interestingly, of the over 3 million ballots requested, which is also higher than the total votes cast in 2016, Democrats and Republicans are tied at 36% each, so it is likely that we'll see the Dems' 8-point lead, which also makes it likely blue on this map, decrease going forward, just based off of that little discrepancy. However, looking back at 2016 and compared to Nevada, Trump only won independents by 3 points here as well, indicating that the president will be counting on registered Republicans to narrow that gap even more so than in Nevada. Next, in the state of Colorado, though, we have over 1.5 million ballots having been returned, another instance where over half of the 2016 vote total in a state has already been counted. Democrats lead by 12 points here, though, which is their highest margin yet, and that is up 4 from 2016 exit polls. That being said, independents make up the largest part of the electorate in Colorado, though, and they also swung towards Trump by 3 points in 2016. However, Joe Biden does have a 12-point lead right now according to 538, so I would not be all that surprised if these numbers stayed about the same as they are right now. It'll be the third straight likely blue state on the map, though, and next is the Lone Star state of Texas, where Democrats will have been hoping to have a lead in early vote for any chance at an upset here, but registered Republicans outnumber Democrats by 16 points right now. That is 7 points higher than the final tally in 2016. To be entirely fair, though, Texas does not register voters by party, and thus these numbers provided by TargetSmart are an estimate based on prior voting history, donation records, and all of that, etc. When looking at the 6.2 million votes already returned, though, that is 70% of the 2016 total as well, meaning time is running out for the Democratic Party to get back into this race in Texas. However, as strange as all of that is, Texas will be safe red on this map, and the next state is Georgia, a state where, similarly to Texas, for the Democrats to have had any chance, they would need some kind of lead in the early vote, but that is not the case once again. Instead, registered Republicans hold a 5% lead over registered Democrats right now, but this data is kind of weird since it only shows 7% of the vote coming from independents or other parties, when in 2016, 30% of the vote came from independents, 34% from Democrats, and 36% from Republicans. However, the independent part of the electorate voted for Trump by 11 points over Hillary Clinton, making up for the slim 2% gap between the two parties and leading to Trump winning the state by 5 points overall. Then again, though, this is another case of a state not registering its voters by party, so I can't really attest to the complete accuracy of this information. However, if there is any good news for Democrats and for the electorate as a whole, 2.3 million ballots have already been returned in Georgia, again over half of the total vote in 2016 as well. It will be marked down as lean red for Trump on the map nonetheless, and we move on to the state of Florida, where Democrats have already built a 9-point lead among the 4.7 million votes already returned. Given how unprecedented the circumstances are surrounding this election, though, it is hard to decipher whether this is a better or worse than expected lead for the Democratic Party. But if we're just comparing the number of ballots returned so far, Florida is actually lagging behind the other states relative to 2016. There are still a lot of early vote days left, though, so we'll have to see whether they catch up by Election Day. However, the state of Florida will go down as likely blue on the electoral map, and next is the state of North Carolina, another state that is typically pretty well known for voting early. 2.9 million ballots have already been returned, which is over 60% of the total vote in 2016, and Democrats lead by 11 points as of right now. However, if you are interested in some context for North Carolina politics, registered Democrats outnumber registered Republicans by a larger margin than you would expect in a swing state that tends to lean red. To support that, in 2016, North Carolina was D+4 according to exit polls, even though Trump ended up winning the state by over 3 points. Also, the 33% of independent voters making up the electorate favored Trump in 2016 by 16 points, greatly contributing to that 3-point win as well. So based on that, we will have to wait and see what happens in North Carolina, but these numbers are promising for Biden no matter how you look at it, and North Carolina will go likely Dem on this election map. Next is the state of Virginia. It was one of the first states to open up early voting back a few weeks ago, yet the number of ballots returned has yet to hit the 50% of 2016 threshold. However, of the 1.7 million returned ballots thus far, 50% came from registered Democrats to 37% from registered Republicans. That margin of lead is up 6% from 2016, but then again, Virginia is expected to go to Biden by a larger margin than it did for Clinton. So although the numbers are biased, of course, for Democrats nationwide in general, just based off preferred method of voting, that 13-point advantage is not far off of the current polling average in Virginia. So I would not be at all surprised if this margin of lead didn't really shrink all that much. However, it will go down as likely blue on the map, pushing Joe Biden above 270 to 275 electoral votes. Moving onward, though, let's get these two northeastern states done with. First, in the state of New Hampshire, 124,000 ballots have already been returned, and Democrats lead by a country mile, 32 points. That, of course, means it will be a safe blue state on the map by a very convincing margin. And let's take a look at Maine statewide, where surprisingly the numbers are the exact same as in New Hampshire, which is weird, but it also means that Maine at large will be safe blue on the map, and it's 2 electoral votes that represent that. However, now we can focus almost all of our attention on the 5 Rust Belt states, starting in the state of Ohio, where almost 2 million votes have already been cast, and registered Republicans lead Democrats by 7 points. Obviously, we have no way of knowing how many Republicans voted for Biden or how many Democrats voted for Trump, but this data does not support whatsoever the virtual toss-up polling has suggested throughout this cycle. Instead, Ohio is looking a whole lot more like it did in 2016, and it will be lean Republican on the map as well. As for its political counterpart, the state of Iowa, 680,000 ballots have been returned, which is just below half of 2016's total, but Democrats lead very convincingly here by 20 percentage points. I can't really think of any concrete reason as to why Dems would be turning out at this much of a higher rate in Iowa than Republicans in Ohio. However, Iowa will be safe blue on this map because of it, and we'll have to see what happens on Election Day in regards to GOP turnout. But up north in the state of Minnesota, the state opened up early voting very early the same day as Virginia. But just like Virginia, it has lagged behind other states in early voting. Although I wouldn't be overly concerned, as Minnesota has a long established history of being one of, if not the best state for voter turnout. As for the data itself, Democrats lead Republicans by 17 points right now, which presents a pretty significant margin for the GOP to overcome by the time polls close on November 3rd. Keep in mind, though, as well, that Minnesota's voter registration is actually pretty even, and it was only D+2 in 2016 exit polls, which should make this lead even more concerning for the GOP. Minnesota will join Iowa, though, as safe blue on this map, and moving eastwards to the state of Wisconsin, where early vote is also lagging behind. However, Republicans lead Democrats by 6 points right now, but Wisconsin is another state where party registration is modeled instead of going off of publicly available registries, which leads me to believe that something is up with Target Smart's model, because Dems lead in basically every other state where party registration is publicly displayed. Saying that, I can't make any argument with objective evidence, but a 6-point lead in the early vote for the GOP in a state as traditionally blue as Wisconsin up until 2016 is somewhat hard to believe. Pushing that aside, though, it will be lean red on this election map. And penultimately, we have the state of Michigan, which is another state where party registration is not made public, and Republicans currently lead Democrats by 2 points. Again, this is hard to believe because, number one, Democrats are voting early at a higher rate than Republicans based on all known evidence. And number two, not only would polling have to be way off, but in 2016, the exit polls showed that Democrats outnumbered Republicans by 9 points in Michigan. So these numbers should definitely be questioned, but it will go down as tilt Republican on the map. And we are upon our final state, Pennsylvania. If you needed any more evidence to suggest that the modeled party registration is fishy, the state of Pennsylvania makes party registration public, and Democrats lead by 51 points, which at first glance is completely ridiculous. But at the same time, out of all of the states we have gone over in this video, Pennsylvania is the furthest behind in turnout. Although that is to be expected because Pennsylvania is not well known to ever have high early vote totals, and that is why you see here on ballots returned, they are almost up 1,000% from 2016. So at the end of the day, Pennsylvania will be safe Democrat on this map, and that finishes the count at 317 for Joe Biden to 221 for President Donald Trump. That means that if voting for some unknown reason ended today and nobody else was allowed to vote across the country, what you see here would be the final 2020 election map. A crucial disclaimer though, that is not going to happen, and the final results and margins will most likely be way different when all is said and done. But let me know in the comments section if you've already voted and where. If you haven't, do you plan on voting early or are you waiting for election day? Whatever it is, make sure you do vote in whichever way works for you. I hope you all enjoyed today's video though. If you did, make sure to like it down below and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, check out more content from me here on your screen. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, tune in next time. EP out.